Ever think about like those bananas you had this morning, and the journey they took to get to your breakfast table? It's a wild story, really. When you start thinking about all the steps involved, like from the farms where they're grown, to the ships that transport them, to the stores where you finally pick them up. But here's the thing that always gets me. The farmers who put in all the work, the ones who literally nurtured those bananas from tiny buds to the fruit we eat. They often receive a tiny, tiny fraction of the profit.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the whole system, doesn't it?
It does. It's like they're providing the main ingredient for, say, a delicious smoothie, but they're only getting paid for like a single banana.
Right, exactly.
And that brings us to today's deep dive. We're going to be unpacking this fascinating excerpt from Unleashing Global Prosperity, a book by CryptoGym, and it's all about this really intriguing initiative called Chrysalis. They're on a mission to, shake up the global economic landscape, particularly for developing nations who are often stuck in that single banana scenario we talked about. They want to help these nations benefit from the entire process, not just the initial resource extraction.
It's not just about getting a bigger piece of the pie either. It's about empowering these nations to actually bake the whole pie themselves.
I love that analogy. So are you ready to dive in? We're going to be exploring how this system works, why it matters to you, Doe, and what it could mean for the future. Buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, let's do it. So to really get what Chrysalis is proposing, we need to understand the current system, the global commodities value chain you mentioned, because the way value is captured at each stage, what creates this huge economic gap between developing and developed nations.
And CryptoGym lays it out with some pretty startling numbers, right? We're talking trillions of dollars here.
Yeah. For every $1 trillion invested in raw materials, think oil, minerals, agricultural products, developing nations only see about $30 billion in earnings. That's just a 3% margin.
So they're doing all the hard work, but barely scraping by. Where is all that extra value going?
Well, imagine those raw materials as just the first step in a much larger journey. When those materials are turned into actual products, that's manufacturing, and the margin jumps to 20%. And then at the retail level, where those products end up in your hands, they capture another 3.7%.
So even though these developing nations are the source of the valuable raw materials, they're missing out on the lion's share of the profits. It's like they're providing all the ingredients for a fancy gourmet meal, but only getting paid for, a pinch of salt.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. The source highlights this huge disparity, stating that developing nations receive less than 0.2% of the total value generated from their own resources across the entire chain. Think about that. Less than 1/5 of 1%.
That's pretty mind-blowing when you put it like that. And the source mentions something called a multiplication factor. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so that means that the value of those raw resources increases by a factor of 15.4 by the time they reach consumers as finished goods. So most of that value is added in those later stages, the manufacturing and retail.
Okay, so we see the problem. Now, how does Chrysalis plan to change this? They're not just making small tweaks to the system, are they? They're talking a complete overhaul.
Yeah, absolutely. Their focus is on empowering developing nations to participate across that entire value chain, not just at the raw materials stage. They have a three-pronged approach. First, they want to help these nations build the infrastructure they need for manufacturing.
So instead of just shipping out those raw materials, they could actually process them in their own countries and create finished goods.
Exactly. Think about it. Selling lumber versus producing furniture. That shift alone could increase their revenue capture from that tiny 3% to 40% or more.
Wow, that's a huge difference. What's the second focus?
Developing retail capabilities. So Chrysalis wants to help these nations create their own brands, set up their own distribution networks, and design their own marketing strategies so they can capture those retail margins themselves instead of relying on foreign companies.
So it's about taking control of the whole process, really, from raw material to that final product in the consumer's hands. What's the third area?
Well, it's a two-pronged approach, actually. It's about enhancing both the commodity spaces and community development. So they want to help implement advanced commodity management techniques to optimize the extraction and sale of raw materials. But it's also about making sure that the increased revenue actually supports community development through things like job creation and infrastructure growth.
A win-win for the nation and its people. They get a bigger slice of the pie, and use it to improve their own communities. But can you give us a more concrete picture of what kind of change Chrysalis could actually bring about?
Let's look at the numbers. Right now, we're talking about a raw materials market worth roughly $8.37 trillion. Developing nations capture a tiny 3% of that. which comes out to about $251 billion. But that's only 0.19% of the total value generated across the entire value chain.
Okay, so that's where we're starting. Now let's sprinkle in some Chrysalis magic.
Okay, so imagine this. If these nations could capture even a decent chunk of those manufacturing and retail margins, well, their potential revenue could skyrocket. We're talking about a potential jump from $251 billion to somewhere between $8.293 trillion and $10.381 trillion.
Hold on, I need to do the math here. That's 33-fold to a 51-fold increase. We're not talking about baby steps, are we? This is like a potential economic earthquake.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. And it's a win-win because Chrysalis takes a modest 5% of that increased revenue and leaves the remaining 95% for those developing nations.
A total game changer. But how do they actually make this happen? Where does blockchain technology fit into all this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Chrysalis is using its own layer 1 blockchain called Chrysalis L1 to democratize investment and make this whole system accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. Imagine being able to invest in a project directly, owning a piece of it, and sharing in its success.
Wait, so you're saying that with Chrysalis L1, everyday people like me could invest in projects driving this economic transformation?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's about empowering individuals to be part of this global shift.
Okay, color me intrigued. I'm ready to geek out on the tech side of things now.
Well, get ready because Chrysalis L1 is designed to be faster, more efficient, and more flexible than those traditional blockchain systems. They've made it incredibly user-friendly and affordable. You don't even need some fancy, expensive computer to get involved. You can actually run a node on your smartphone.
Like, seriously, you can participate in this global economic shift right from your pocket.
That's the beauty of it. They've intentionally lowered those barriers to entry to make sure everyone has a chance to be a part of this movement.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this blockchain is setting the stage, making all of this possible. But how do people actually invest in these projects? What's the actual mechanism?
That's where their direct ownership tokens come in, or DOTs for short. Think of them as a way to own a piece of a specific project, whether it's a manufacturing plant, a retail venture, or even a commodity extraction site. And the best part is it's not just for the big players.
So if I buy a DOT, I basically become a mini owner of that project.
Yeah.
And get a share of the profits.
Yep, exactly. And they offer DOTs at different investment levels. So you can start small or go big, whatever suits you.
Okay, so it's flexible and caters to all kinds of investors. But what makes these DOTs different from just any old cryptocurrency? Are they backed by something tangible?
Absolutely. DOTs are backed by real assets, so they represent a share in a tangible project, not some abstract concept or anything. They also have built-in deflationary mechanisms, things like buy and burn programs, that reduce the token supply over time.
So it's not just about participating in a project, but also about potentially seeing my investment actually grow over time.
Right. Imagine investing, say, $100 in a DOT representing a piece of that manufacturing project we talked about. As that project grows and generates profits, your DOT could be worth significantly more than your initial investment.
So not only am I contributing to the economic empowerment of a developing nation,
yeah,
but I'm also potentially setting myself up for some nice returns.
It's a win-win. And we can't forget about the ripple effect this could have globally.
The ripple effect, that's what gets me really excited. It's like this chain reaction starting with a single investment.
Exactly. Investments in these nations lead to national growth, increased stability, and economic empowerment. And for investors in developed nations, it opens up access to these high-growth markets.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. Investing in a DOT isn't just about a financial transaction. It's like casting a vote for a more equitable and prosperous world.
And that's the beauty of what Chrysalis is doing. They're not just creating a financial system, they're building a movement.
And I'm definitely feeling the movement. So what's next on our deep dive journey?
Well, now that we've got those core concepts down, I think it's time to unpack this whole chain reaction idea you mentioned. Let's break down those steps that could lead to this massive global economic shift.
I'm ready. Let's delve deeper into how Chrysalis is actually bringing this vision to life.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Chrysalis. As we kind of go deeper into this world, it's like crucial to grasp just how intertwined the success of this initiative is with the power of its tech, you know?
Absolutely. We talked about some key features of Chrysalis L1, their blockchain, but now I'm ready to go beyond the surface. What are the technical innovations that really make this platform unique?
Yeah, one thing that really jumped out at me in CryptoGym's piece was their blockchain architecture is actually Super innovative. They designed Chrysalis L1 with this multi-nano chain structure that just allows for incredible scalability and efficiency.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's so special about this multi-nano chain setup? It sounds pretty complex.
It is, but imagine a superhighway with multiple lanes and all these interconnected routes. Instead of like cramming all the traffic onto a single blockchain, Chrysalis L1 distributes those transactions across many nanochains, all operating in parallel.
So instead of one massive highway that gets all congested, you have this network of smaller, faster roads that can handle way more traffic.
Exactly. And that solves a huge problem that a lot of blockchain platforms struggle with: scalability. As more users join a traditional blockchain, it can get bogged down, leading to slower transactions and those higher fees.
It's like everyone trying to squeeze through a single toll booth during rush hour. It's just not efficient.
Exactly. But with Chrysalis L1, it's the opposite. As more users come on board, the system actually gets faster because each new nanochain adds another lane to our blockchain highway, allowing more transactions to be processed at the same time.
So they've basically future-proofed their system, making sure it can handle the huge influx of users and transactions as this whole movement grows.
Right. And this setup also makes the system incredibly resilient. If one nanochain has a hiccup, the others can keep running smoothly without any interruption. It ensures the stability of the whole network.
It's like having a backup generator for your blockchain, always ready to kick in if there's a power outage.
Yes, a bit.
Impressive. What other technical features set Chrysalis L1 apart?
Well, CryptoGym emphasizes the energy efficiency of their blockchain, which is a big deal in the crypto world.
Yeah, the whole crypto is bad for the environment thing.
Yeah.
It's an argument I hear a lot. How does Chrysalis address that?
They've designed Chrysalis L1 to be really lightweight and energy efficient, minimizing its environmental impact. It doesn't rely on those energy-intensive mining processes that some other blockchains use.
So they're not adding to the problem. That's a huge plus.
Yeah, and they even have features built in to track the energy consumption of each transaction, promoting transparency and accountability.
They're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Another key area they focused on is user experience. Remember, they want to make this system accessible to everyone, even those who aren't tech savvy.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't expect everyone to be a blockchain expert.
Right. So they reduced those technical requirements and made it super user-friendly. Remember how I mentioned running a node on your smartphone? You don't need a powerful computer to participate.
That's amazing, especially for people in developing nations who might not have access to expensive hardware.
Exactly. And they designed these intuitive interfaces and simplified the whole process.
So they're building for mass adoption, not just a select few.
That's the goal. The more people who can easily access and use the platform, the more impactful this whole movement becomes.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
Yeah.
Making sure everyone can participate. Okay, so we have this platform that's scalable, energy efficient, user-friendly. But what about security? How do they make sure the network is safe and reliable?
Security is absolutely crucial, especially when we're talking about financial transactions. Chrysalis L1 uses a multi-layered approach to address that. Remember, we discussed the free validator participation.
Yeah, where anyone can become a validator without needing a huge investment.
Right, and that actually strengthens security by promoting decentralization. With a large and diverse group of validators all over the world, there's no single point of failure, making it way harder for bad actors to compromise the network.
It's like a security system with multiple checkpoints and guards, instead of just one front door that can be easily breached.
Exactly. Plus, they use sophisticated cryptography to protect those transactions and user data. It's like having a bank vault for your digital assets.
Okay, so security is covered. But how do they ensure transparency and build trust within the system? That seems pretty crucial for a global movement like this.
Transparency is at the heart of Chrysalis L1. They built in features like immutable records and supply chain tracking. So every single transaction is verifiable and auditable.
So there's a clear record of everything.
Yeah.
Where it comes from, where it goes, who's involved. That sounds like a powerful tool against corruption.
It is. This level of transparency is essential for building trust among investors and participants. It's like a public ledger that anyone can access and verify.
No secrets, no hidden agendas. Everyone can see what's happening.
Exactly. Now we've covered a lot of technical stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all about people, right? So how do individuals actually use this system? How do they invest in projects and manage their DOTs?
That's a great point. Let's bring it back down to earth.
Chrysalis developed a suite of user-friendly tools and applications to make it super simple for anyone to participate, even if they're not a blockchain whiz.
So they're not just building a fancy technology, they're making it accessible and empowering.
Exactly. They have this dashboard where you can browse through different projects, research them, and then invest in DOTs with just a few clicks. It's like online shopping, but for a better future.
I love that. And once you've got some DOTs, what then? Do you just sit back and wait for the profits?
Well, the system is designed to distribute those profits from the projects directly to the DOT holders. So as a project starts generating revenue, you receive a portion of those profits based on how many DOTs you hold.
Like dividends from a company. You're literally sharing in the success of those projects you invested in.
Great analogy. And Chrysalis has features that allow you to track the performance of your investments, get updates on the projects, and even participate in those governance decisions.
So it's not just passive investing. There's this real sense of community involvement and ownership.
Absolutely. They want DOT holders to be active participants, helping shape the direction of those projects.
It's starting to sound less like a traditional investment platform and more like a global cooperative with people from all walks of life coming together to build a better future.
I think that's a really beautiful way to put it. It's about harnessing the power of technology to empower individuals, create opportunities, and foster a more equitable and sustainable world.
I love it. So we've gone from those nitty-gritty technical details to this big picture vision of a global community.
And that's the cool thing about this deep dive. We're seeing how Chrysalis is using technology to create this bridge between the digital world and the real world with the potential to impact millions of lives.
Definitely having some aha moments over here.
Oh, hold on tight, because I think it's time to move on
to
the real heart of the story. Let's explore how Chrysalis is putting all of this technology into action. Let's see how they're partnering with nations and communities to bring about real-world change.
All right. Welcome back to our deep dive into Chrysalis. We've gone from those realities of the global commodities value chain to the inner workings of Chrysalis L1, their blockchain platform. But now I'm really curious to see how all this innovation actually translates into real-world action. How are they partnering with nations and communities to actually bring about this economic transformation?
That's the key, right? Having a vision and the tech is great, but putting it into practice effectively, that's a whole other challenge.
Exactly. So how does Chrysalis approach those partnerships? What's their strategy?
They really emphasize a collaborative approach, working closely with local governments, businesses, communities to really understand the specific needs and opportunities in each region.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. They tailor their approach to each unique situation.
Exactly. They start with in-depth assessments, to understand the existing economic landscape, the resources, the challenges, the whole context. It's like they're doing their own deep dive before even proposing any solutions.
Like a doctor taking time to understand a patient's history before prescribing any treatment.
Exactly. Once they have that clear understanding, they work with those local stakeholders to come up with targeted strategies to leverage Chrysalis's resources and technology.
Can you give me some concrete examples? I'm curious to see how they turn these ideas into actual projects. Projects that actually make a difference.
Sure. CryptoGym highlights one partnership with a nation rich in mineral resources, but without the infrastructure to process those minerals locally.
So they're stuck in that trap of exporting raw materials, missing out on the added value of manufacturing.
Right. So Chrysalis worked with them to build this state-of-the-art processing plant, allowing them to refine the minerals right there and produce those higher value products.
So they're capturing a larger share of the profits, creating jobs, boosting their own economy.
Exactly. And it goes further. Chrysalis helped them set up a local manufacturing facility, too, to produce finished goods using those refined minerals.
Wow. They're moving up the value chain step by step, taking control of their own destiny. What about retail? How are they helping nations develop their own brands and reach consumers?
CryptoGym gives another great example. They partnered with this nation known for its coffee beans, but they were selling those beans in bulk to big corporations who then slapped their own labels on them and took most of the profit.
Providing the premium ingredient, but not getting the brand recognition.
Right. So Chrysalis helped them create a unique brand identity, designed packaging, developed a marketing strategy.
So they went from selling generic beans to selling a brand, an experience.
And they helped them build an online marketplace and set up a global distribution network so they could sell directly to consumers worldwide.
They cut out the middleman and took control. That's empowering. It seems like Chrysalis is taking a holistic approach. tackling many different aspects of economic development.
You got it. They understand that true economic empowerment is more than just boosting GDP. It's about creating sustainable jobs, infrastructure, a thriving local economy that benefits everyone.
It's about creating that ripple effect where economic growth leads to social progress and a better quality of life for everyone.
Yes, and that's why they don't just focus on economic projects. They also work on community development initiatives.
What kind of initiatives are those?
It varies depending on the region. It could be education, healthcare, clean water systems, microloans for entrepreneurs, environmental conservation. It's about addressing the root causes of poverty.
So they're really invested in the long-term well-being, not just short-term profits.
Exactly. Economic development and social progress go hand in hand.
I'm impressed with their approach, really. But what about the bigger picture? If this model scales up, what kind of global impact could we see?
CryptoGym points out that there's an estimated $120 trillion in untapped market value globally, largely because of these economic imbalances we discussed.
So there's a huge potential for growth if we can empower those developing nations.
Exactly. And Chrysalis believes their model is the key. As more nations adopt it and use their technology, we could see a dramatic shift in the global landscape.
What would that shift look like?
Imagine a world where developing nations are no longer trapped in poverty and dependence. They control their resources, manufacture their products, build their brands. They capture a fair share of the value they create.
A world where prosperity is more evenly distributed, where opportunity is available to everyone.
Yes, and where economic growth is about improving lives and building a just society for all.
That's a powerful vision.
It gives me hope.
Me too. But why should our listeners care about all of this?
Well, on a practical level, there's the investment opportunity. DOTs offer a way for individuals to invest in high-growth projects in developing nations, potentially earning strong returns while contributing to something positive.
It's about aligning your investments with your values, being part of a movement for a better world.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just the financial aspect. Chrysalis represents a new way of thinking about global economics, moving away from those exploitative models towards a more collaborative system.
We're all connected, and our actions can have a ripple effect.
That's it. This deep dive has been so eye-opening. Chrysalis is more than just a company. They're a catalyst for a new way of thinking.
It's been a fascinating journey. Chrysalis has presented a bold vision for the future, where technology empowers communities and transforms economies. It's inspiring to see them working towards making it a reality.
I agree, and it's just the beginning. We're witnessing the early stages of a potential paradigm shift.
So for our listeners, if this system scales globally, what kind of impact could it have on your life? What opportunities might open up for you, your family, your community? I encourage you to explore Chrysalis further. See how you might be a part of this movement. Until next time, keep diving deep.